From Isolation Studios, it's Richard Crouse.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Richard Crouse. I hope you're staying healthy and I hope you're staying happy. My guest today has photobombed Justin Trudeau. He once offered Pamela Anderson $1 million if she would retire from acting. Since 2013, Mark Critch has been a regular cast member of the mock television news program This Hour Has 22 Minutes, where his impressions of Donald Trump and Don Cherry, among many others, and his road pieces where he interacts with celebrities like Michael Douglas, Alec Baldwin, and Hillary Clinton have helped win the show 11 Canadian Comedy Awards. Today, we talk about his early life memoir, Son of a Critch, great name, a Globe and Mail bestseller, and the first of a trio of books about growing up and making a career in Newfoundland. Let's get to know Mark Critch.
I am in St. John's, Newfoundland, land of my birth, right downtown on just 2 streets up from Water Street, yeah.
And you talk a great deal about how growing up in St. John's inspired you because it was isolated. You're really isolated now. I assume you're not really leaving the house that often, that you're in self-isolation. What's it like now?
Well, that's the thing about, Newfoundlanders are known for music and for comedy. And I think that comes from having to entertain yourself in these small communities that were all created just for the fishery, very small population. So somebody had to do something to keep each other happy. You either played an instrument or if you were useless like me, you tried to be funny. So now all these skills that we've for generations enhanced are useless because you're by yourself. So you had to, it's very hard for a Newfoundlander to sit in a room by himself. But it's great because, I find what's interesting about this is we're not with people anymore, but I feel connected in different ways. I mean, I've been on the telephone a lot more. It's always been texting, and you reach out to find a voice. You do things like we're doing now, and you really focus on these conversations you're having. And it's helped a lot of, older people in our lives kind of catch up with some of the technology. So I think the creativity now is finding ways to stay connected.
I've had conversations with people, regular conversations with people that I haven't spoken to in ages, or normally I might speak to them once or twice a year if they don't live near me, talk at Christmas, maybe on their birthdays. Now we're doing regular weekly Zoom phone calls, and I'm actually really enjoying that part of this whole situation.
Yeah, me too. And that's what I find. And I find that because we are maybe starved for attention a little bit, but also because the people you choose to reach out to are people who are important to you. And I think you realize who you're going to cling to and who you want to talk to. So I find these conversations are really focused. And also I find myself like sometimes in a group, we all have these group Zoom chats going on with different folks, just getting a much stronger connection to someone. And then at the end of it, I think we'll kind of all feel like we went through this, like we earned a little badge together. And future generations be like, oh, come on, you weren't in COVID. You knew nothing about what it was like.
So what exactly are you doing to pass the time when you're not on Zoom, when you're not doing this? You're working on a book, I know that, but that can't be 24 hours of your day.
No, it isn't. I've been doing a lot of walking, a lot of hiking. I got married in August. And so we're supposed to be on our honeymoon right now. We're supposed to be in France. And it's easy to be in love in Paris. It's harder to be in love in like week 10 of a quarantine. So it's great that it's testing the relationship. You get married and then you go immediately to like year 30 of marriage,
Right.
where you're just, can you chew quieter? But it's good because it's great. We're realizing like, okay, great. You're the right person for me to marry. She's working at home too. She's a lawyer. So I'm learning too that's a real job as opposed to me. It's like, I might have to come up with a tweet later. And she's like, I'm doing a case. I have to, want some help? It's like, I realize like, I'm going to go in the other room now. So that's good. But yeah, I've been doing that, like everybody else, I've been trying to cook more. But one thing that's a bit different for me is I have a few friends who are chefs and sommeliers and all this stuff. And we've known each other for years. And we always come together for benefits and stuff. And I get to be around their world a little bit. But they've been having this weekly Zoom chat. And what it is, it's like a wine tasting Zoom chat. Now, I am not a classy fellow like yourself. You're a very cultured, refined man. Of the arts, of these things. So I was just kind of like a red, white, I don't know, I'm guessing. But what we do is everybody puts in a couple of bottles of wine.
Right.
Somebody does a pickup. They pour it in the mason jars. Then we come on Zoom and have a wine tasting. And then the sommelier guy is like, oh, well, what region do you think it's from? And people are learning a lot, but also getting very drunk in a classy, refined way. So that's been my big thing, is I've learned a little about wine. Yeah.
I love that. We've been ordering in wine. My wife has been ordering in wine, and she belongs to a wine club. And the other day, a bottle of wine, I think it's called a Jeroboam of wine, arrived, and it's huge. It's almost as big as she is. And
like
so
a Jerry Lewis prop.
That's right. That's right. And I don't know exactly what we're going to do with it, because it's rosé, so it needs to be chilled. There's no way it's fitting in our fridge here. So we have to wait till the winter, I think, and just leave it outside for a while so it cools.
Yeah, in a snowbank.
Break it.
Yeah, that's great.
So the first thing that you'll do when you can leave the house and the mason jars of wine behind, what do you think that will be?
Wow. I think I would imagine first thing we would do is get a bunch of people in the pub here. And my pub of choice here in St. John's is a place called the Republic. And the bartender there and the owners are all good friends. And we have a group of regulars down there. We go and solve all the world's problems. So I think a bunch of people probably celebrate there. And then I would like to have a dinner party. I would just like to have all these people, family and friends over, and just pack the house and, eat and touch and hug as much as possible, I think would be great.
Yeah, I hope it happens right away. I hope that people aren't feeling strange about it. I hope that you don't have a dinner party and you look around and everyone's wearing a mask.
Well, I think there is going to be a bit of that too. You'll be able to see, I think, right away what people actually think of you, because it'll be like, you go to hug somebody, they'll be like, no, well, COVID. It's like, you just hugged that guy. Oh, well, yeah, I know him differently. So I think you'll find out exactly where you stand with people.
Now, I love in your book, Son of a Critch, a Childish Newfoundland Memoir, how you speak about growing up in Newfoundland. I grew up on the East Coast as well, not as far east as you, but I grew up in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
And when you tell people that you're from Nova Scotia, they assume that you grew up in a lighthouse, on the ocean, all that kind of thing. And I assume the same is true for Newfoundland. But for you, it really wasn't exactly that at all. It wasn't what we think of. Can you describe a little bit of what it was like for you?
My dad worked on the radio, and he was a news broadcaster at a radio station. This radio station was right on the outskirts of the city, a little bit outside, called VOCM. And we lived in a little white bungalow next to the station and the transmitter. Because, in those days, there had to be somebody. So Dad thought, okay, well, this is great. I'm going to stay in the station house. And Dad was like a lighthouse keeper for a radio station. And this was on the Trans-Canada Highway. There's nothing except for a couple of farms, a car dealership, and then these lanes of traffic, of transport trucks going by. So it's kind of like growing up at the first level of the video game Frogger. No other kids around. My dad was an old guy. Dad was in his 50s when he had me, late 50s. And so all the other kids had these younger parents, and and everybody around me and my family was much older. I lived with my grandmother too, so it was just a lot of older folks, and no kids, and this your imagination kind of had to take over, and that was it for me. Yeah, and everybody expects there to be whales and tell me the story about. But when I first went to school in kindergarten, that was the first time I'd really spent time around other kids. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting to think about the way you grew up. So your dad's a journalist and well-known.
Very well-known, yeah.
He's a very well-known guy. Your mother you describe as a storyteller. And so it seems to me that you're kind of the mix of the two of them. You are the natural conclusion of the two of them coming together.
Dad worked at a radio station. Mom was a radio station. She gossiped, and she spoke in a real machine gun blast of gossip every time she'd meet somebody. Like, oh, you're Marjorie Chafes. Oh, my God, I heard all about what happened. Now your husband, he got the cancer. I was like, now you smoked, didn't he? And your son smoked. Oh, my God, it's like a hat trick, isn't he? Everybody in the house smoked, but you didn't kill him. You loved him. My God, I'm sorry for your loss. And she would just dig into the deepest parts of people, but very funny and lovely. And and we, Dad, we didn't have any of that kind of Newfoundland experience. And as part of the book, I started looking into our family history. And Dad's father died when he was 5 of TB. And he had been a fisherman early on, but then he left and his friend drowned. And so he went off to New York building skyscrapers. A lot of Newfoundlanders were iron workers in like the 20s. And before that, his father was a fisherman who drowned. And before that, his father was a whaler who drowned. So it's kind of like drown, 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 TB. Let's all just be kind of useless people. And that'll be a journalist, comment on things that happen. Let's not do anything. I'll be a comedian. I'll make fun of things that happen. So that was the end of us doing things. So I guess we became far removed from all of the romanticism of the sea.
Well, and you talk about having older parents and how your love of politics and probably your opinionated nature about that came from overhearing conversations that they would have, because I'm sure, given your mother's love of gossip and your father's job, that there was probably a lot of that.
Oh, it's incredible, because Dad was a journalist. Dad covered Confederation with Canada for a newspaper here called the Daily News.
I know.
And so he was, he knew everyone and knew everything about everyone. And Mom had heard everything about these people. And so they have chats, and all that was their sports, was politics, There was no ever talk of hockey in our house or baseball, anything like that. It was all sports, parties were teams. And in Newfoundland, you have these big, they're like wrestlers, a lot of the politicians. You have Joey Smallwood, John Crosby, and there weren't debates. They're just these comic insult matches, and the province is forever booming and busting. We have oil with Danny Williams. We have everything. Now we have nothing again. So it's very dramatic. So even as a kid, you'd get into it, and these stories stay with you, forever.
And I just love how this, I guess, I don't know, your ability to mock authority. I was going to say anti-authoritarians, but I don't think it's that. It's your love of mocking authority that I think probably stems from that, and from being from Newfoundland. I mean, I have a feeling that because of the politics of the province, because of a lot of different elements, that you have to develop a fairly strong sense of humor about the politics of the country that you're living in.
Oh, very much so, because I think a lot of it too comes from humor here has always been kind of a defense mechanism. You'd have big storms, big disasters, things like that. And people kind of there is no, can I go on or shall I go on? You had to, because in the early days, that survival was part of it. It was people would drown and die, and then the next day you had to go out and fish. And I think, and so people developed kind of a dark sense of humor, and there wasn't much of a class system here. There were merchants and people who had everything, and then there was everybody else who had nothing. So the people in power were always kind of, never trusted, kind of made fun of, snickered at, and told in songs. Like a lot of the songs are making fun of people or dealing with the hard times in a humorous nature. So that's kind of inbred in you bred into you to take things with a bit of a grain of salt, shrug them off, and have a laugh at them. So when we grew up, I went to Catholic school. We'd all, I do impressions of the nuns and the Christian brothers and stuff. And now you do impressions of, Doug Ford. Yeah. It's sort of the same thing you're doing in high school, just with different people.
And I imagine too that growing up, as you described, exactly where you grew up, and trick-or-treating at the car dealership and that kind of thing, gave you sort of a sense that this was different. This doesn't feel exactly the same as all, the kids that I'm going to be meeting when I go to school.
Oh boy, in school though, kids would be talking about stuff. They talk about things their parents did, or talk about going, playing after school. I'd get on this school bus at, I didn't get home till almost 5 o'clock, after school, and you'd see this world go by of these cul-de-sacs and these kids playing, and like, oh my God, that's what it's like, and desperately trying to fit in. I mean, my dad was a big John McCormick, Bing Crosby, and Al Jolson fan. Pre-Sinatra, he thought of as a young guy, So kids, we'd be talking about music, and people are like, what kind of music do you like? Oh, I like Michael Jackson. I like AC/DC. And I'm like, oh, are you guys more of a Caruso guy, or are you guys into Eddie Cantor? And what are you talking about? So I had no idea. So that was weird. It was very hard to fit in, and I think, and then you get bullied right away because they sense there's something weird about this guy in corduroys over there and hush puppies with a bunch of 78s under his arm. So they realize, okay, he's the weakest link, and then using that humor then to try and distract them a bit, and they'd be like, oh, you're kind of funny. Do that nun's voice again, and then they almost like a mascot. Then you become, So I really figure out this humor as a way to fit in, find a place, and survive.
Writing the book and recounting all of this, did it bring up happy memories for you? Was it cathartic at all? What was it like going back and putting all this on paper?
Well, I realized like so many of these memories were quite vivid for me growing up, and I realized how important the family was. And at the time, it really helped me appreciate things. And then doing a bit of research about the family tree that Dad never talked about the past, because I asked him, we should do the family tree. And he said, oh no, why would you want to do that? You spend all this money trying to find out where you came from and twice as much trying to cover it up again. And I thought there's truth to that. But I think the way he didn't want to look back was there was a lot of sadness. And he had, tried to create this other life better for us. And a lot of appreciation, I think, for what they had gone through, as quirky and weird as it was. And then you look at other kids growing up, you're like, oh, I wish our house was like that. I wish my life was like that. Why aren't we like that? And then you realize, like, well, what we had was quite special. Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't trade it now, because everything I am now and any success that I have had is, because of that mixed stew of experiences that I had.
Now, let's have a look at a couple of things here, and I'm going to ask you which one was more nerve-wracking.
Okay.
Photobombing Justin Trudeau,
yeah.
Interviewing Great Big C's Alan Doyle as Alan Doyle while impersonating Alan Doyle, crashing a White House briefing, or offering Pamela Anderson $1 million to stop acting.
It would have to go down to the Justin Trudeau photobomb thing. I really enjoyed that because I was bringing my kids up to meet the Prime Minister. He was at Signal Hill, and they hadn't met him. And I said, oh, you guys should come by and meet the Prime Minister. That would be a thing. You look back at this. And we get up there, and the kid said, Dad, do me a favor. Please don't embarrass me. Please. I said, what do you mean embarrass you? What if you're going to do something stupid? You're going to do some kind of stunt. I'm like, I'm not working. I'm just here to introduce you to somebody. Oh, please don't do anything embarrassing. And I thought, okay. And they meet the Prime Minister. He's quite nice. And then I thought of what they said with and I said, okay, hang on. And Justin had just been seen, with his shirt off in the background of all these pictures. Right. So I took my shirt off and did the thing. And then my son looks up and says, I thought you weren't going to do anything embarrassing. I said, I wasn't until you reminded me that I could. So that was more of a dad moment. Yeah. But the Pamela Anderson one was a bit nerve-wracking because she had offered $1 million for all of the sealers in Canada to give up sealing, which I thought was disingenuous because it sounds like a lot, but it worked out to be something like $64 or something, or $600 per sealer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I offered the check, and I had to there's all these protesters and counter protesters, and that wasn't for the show either. I just wanted to do that in the moment. So I wade through and I hand her a check, and then the guy from PETA was there, and he demanded the police arrest me or kick me out of there. Because he said, you're here to we're paying for police officers to be here. This person's disrupting this. Get rid of this man. And I look at the cop, and he takes off his glove. He said, Mr. Critch, just wanted to shake your hand. I was like, aha, not in LA anymore, Pamela. These are my people. So that was, at the time, it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah. So you're working on the second book now. Tell me what we can expect from that.
That kind of is more career stories and later life stories. A lot, travels for work to Beijing and Jordan and Afghanistan, where I was doing a stand-up act once, and in Afghanistan, and we had 3 rocket attacks during it, and then meeting a lot of our great Canadian forces over there. And I got in the middle of a fight at a traveler's wedding in Dublin. That's a story. And, so it's a bunch of these kind of like later life kind of things that people might expect from a book with me in it,
And you travel a lot for work.
Yeah.
In Canada and internationally. What do you think will happen when all this is said and done? Do you think that you're going to feel as comfortable getting on an airplane?
The weird thing about this is when you travel this much as I do, you're often sneezed upon. There's often the person next to you with no shoes. I'm often spilled upon. I've had a baby throw up on me. A lot of stuff happens. I've never felt that. I'm kind of like, all right, I'm going to every year I catch my plane cold. Yeah, I'm kind of probably a more comfortable traveler to begin with, but I'm sure that things are going to change. First thing I thought about was, if you look at all the temporary measures over time, like whether it's taxes or any other number of things, the taking off your shoes when you're flying to the States, any event like this always comes with a change to society that we don't even notice that much at the time. But then when you realize, oh, right, we never did that. So I'm kind of curious to see what those changes are going to be. And they're going to happen in travel. They're going to happen in restaurants. They're going to happen in all kinds of things. So we are in for a major shift. Yeah.
I think no food on planes. I think that'll be one of the things that we see.
A blessing and a curse. I think they can't wait to take away the frills. That's the first thing. So there will be planes flying will get slightly worse, guaranteed. As long as there's booze, I'm happy.
Now you are in your home in Newfoundland right now in St. John. Yep. You live there. You travel to work. Why are people from St. John's and Newfoundland so devoted to their province?
People have always done this same thing. They've always gone away for work, whether it's going to Alberta when times are tough here, whether it's going away to fish and coming back, whether it's me or Alan Doyle or any of these people, like we go off and we come back. And it's a real strong sense of community. I think the people here are very, very friendly and kind of depend on each other. I almost feel like a traitor leaving, no matter if times got tough, because you think, well, I should be trying to do my part. It's a wonderful place. It's beautiful here, but the people it's not the oil, it's not the fish. It's the people that are the great resource here. And it's the kind of place you don't want to leave. You feel lucky to be here, and then you want to try and do your part to, leave it a little bit better if you can.
Well, give my best to Newfoundland and Alan Doyle and Seamus O'Regan and anyone else of my friends down there that you may happen to see.
Oh, they all live just down the road from me, just around the corner. Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Like I said, I love everything you do. So it's a real honor for me to talk to you.
Well, that was Mark Critch. Catch him on This Hour Has 22 Minutes. Look for his book, Son of a Critch, I still love that name, wherever you buy fine books, and eagerly anticipate his next book when he finishes writing it. Well, that's it for today. My thanks to Mark Critch for giving me an idea about starting a new kind of wine club with mason jars, and for spending some time with us today. Most of all, though, as always, my thanks goes to you for joining us. I hope you're staying safe, I hope you're staying healthy, and staying happy. I'm Richard Crouse, and we'll talk again soon.